You have arrived, and you are exactly where you need to be in this very moment. And so I want you to take a couple deep breaths and really acknowledge that within yourself right now. That I have arrived in this moment, and this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And so when you feel into that within yourself, notice where your awareness goes. Where do you feel? Is it your heart? Is it in your gut? Is there a sense of aliveness or a connection, like the dots finally connected? And so wherever you're at during your day right now, maybe you are stuck going down the rabbit holes of your phone, or maybe you just opened YouTube and you're watching this video. Wherever you are, whatever you're already feeling, like in the acknowledgement of where you are actually at, that is the space that you are supposed to be in. And that's a space of presence. That's a space of deeply honoring this current moment. And so there doesn't need to be any shame. Are you stuck on your phone right now? Is there something bigger in your life that you're avoiding that you feel like you should be looking at? Or maybe you're in a moment of extreme connection, and this is just another piece to that connection, and you feel great. Or maybe you don't even know where you're at, and maybe this is the first time that you've ever heard anything like this. Really checking in with where you are at on a deep level. And so whatever the case is, wherever you feel like you fall on that spectrum, let's just leave that aside for now. And let's be here right now, in this moment, together. Even though you're on a screen looking at me, there is a space here. That's the funny thing with this YouTube thing, is like you are on your phone right now, and in some way it transports us into the same space together. And so can you take a moment and really drop into this space with me of really being here right now? And so for me, this is the space that I think we should all always be coming back to. Not you watching my videos, but this space of where am I at right now? What am I deeply feeling? And can I take a moment, take a step back and fully shine the light of my awareness and attention? Okay, this is where I'm at. All right, I'm feeling like shit today. This is where I'm at right now. Okay, I just got lost on Instagram for an hour. This is where I'm at. Or, man, I'm feeling so good. I am celebrating the fuck out of this win that I just had during my day. That's where we're at. But when we check in that way, when we take a step back and really shine that light of awareness on where are we at in this moment, it opens up space. It opens up space for realignment, where we get to come back into the center of our being. Because you don't have to be in a good, positive mood smiling to be centered. Right? We can come back to our center, to that place within us that is grounded and firm always. We can be sad, miserable, lonely, and still come back to that place. And it doesn't mean that we are going to magically disappear from that sadness and the grief and whatever is present with you. But we get to be connected while also feeling whatever it is that we are feeling. And so when we open up that space to realign, what are we realigning to? For me, what we are realigning to is life. This intelligence of life, this self-organizing force of life that is always ringing, that is always making a sound. That is what we are realigning to. There's a doggy. So there was literally 2 dogs that ran up out of nowhere. I'm in this like part on the lake that I live in that is super isolated. No one ever comes back here. And 2 dogs randomly come up here, and then a dude walks out. And the dogs are shaking off all of their stuff right by my phone and all the camera equipment. And what auspicious timing, though, as I'm talking about realigning to this life intelligence that is everywhere within us all the time. Because the truth is that it's not always so beautiful. It's not always that we know exactly what is in front of us, that we know the next step and it's so clear and we're just aligning with this beautiful flow of life. Sometimes it's really messy, right? Sometimes dogs run up on you out of nowhere and they get all of your camera equipment messy, and then you're totally lost your train of thought where you are at, and that's okay. And I think that's one of the greatest skills, because within learning to listen to life and learning to move with the grain of how life is moving through you, I think one of the biggest pieces is trust. Like, this idea sounds great, but how much do you really trust in that intelligence? How much do you really trust that there maybe is a force in life that has your back and is asking you to trust in it? Right? For a lot of people, we don't trust in it very much. We were born in a culture that has completely forgot about living in this way. And so maybe for the first time, you are trusting in this intelligence of life, in this guiding force. And I use these words, intelligence of life, life force energy, self-organizing force, whatever word you want to use, though, is great. Maybe you want to use the word God. That's okay. But for me, it really breaks down to the fact that in every moment, there is some place within you that knows what to do, that knows your truth, that knows what feels right for you. And that is what I am talking about coming back to. In that there is something bigger than you that is dreaming through you. And so maybe it is dreaming through you in a career change, in new relationships, through creation, through something that you've always wanted to create. Maybe it's dreaming through you in the existential crisis that you're going through. Because in order for you to actually start aligning with these deeper truths within you, you have to be brought to your knees. And that's the case it is for most people in our culture right now, right? Life speaks in feathers, bricks, and freight trains to wake us up. And for a lot of people in our current culture, it's taking the freight train, because we have been so indoctrinated into these ways of being. We have grown up in dysfunctional families, and we have accumulated wounds across our lifetimes without containers to actually process and heal the wounds. And so then we adopt these coping mechanisms, these survival strategies. And for most people, we are walking coping mechanisms. We haven't actually done the work to start peeling those layers, coming back into this essence, this truth of who we are, the place within us that existed before we felt like we needed to start defending who we are, before we felt like we needed to put up our guard. And so for most people, years and years go by as we have been habituated into these ways of being, these compensatory identities, these defense mechanisms, and we mistake those for who we are. It's been so long operating in this way that we have forgotten what it's like to operate in a different way. And so why would I change? This is who I am. That's what a lot of people say. And so it takes these freight trains to take us to our knees to finally acknowledge that, oh wow, this isn't me. This life that I'm living, I don't like this life. I'm not aligned with this life. I feel kind of empty inside. And so that is what it takes. And so in the beginning, arriving into this space, acknowledging that this is where you're supposed to be at, that finding those moments throughout our day, throughout our weeks, throughout our life, those are the moments where we get to recalibrate and ask those questions. Am I living aligned with life? Right? And for maybe some of you, you don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. That's a start. Because as we're trying to align with life and listen more closely to how the divine, God, life force, intelligence, whatever you want to call it, to listen to how that's wanting to move through us, I think a great card to keep in our back pocket to continue coming back to is soften into what is here, right? It's a great way, because when we start resisting what is actually here, right? This is a cliche, be present, surrender, don't resist, but it's so true. When we resist what's here, and there's a part of us that says, no, this experience that I'm having right now, there's something wrong with it. I should be feeling somewhere else. We start to add layers and layers and layers. And we're moving further away from the raw core of who we are. And in order to come back to that place, that center point, that access mundi within us, we need to continually soften into what is here. And so maybe what that looks like for you right now is admitting that I have no idea if I'm living an aligned life. I have no idea if I'm going with the grain of life. Because when we acknowledge that layer of our experience, it brings us into deeper parts of our experience. It brings us into deeper states of presence. And maybe for you to hear the sign of life right now, what it asks of you is to acknowledge that you have no idea what life is saying. Maybe you acknowledge that, and maybe there's some emotion there of confusion and feeling lonely and feeling left out by life. And on the other side of processing that, you realize there's clarity. You realize you do know what to do. You realize you do know parts of who you are. And so I think holding on to that piece of it's probably a good idea to soften and acknowledge and accept wherever you are at. And so there's a lot of nuance to that conversation, because sometimes softening might mean actually getting really big and angry. Not cussing out your parents, but maybe it means going on a drive and screaming and punching your steering wheel. And like, the softening part is more of being with whatever's there and letting that shit express. Because I think the reason that a lot of people have trouble hearing what life has to say is because we're operating at this very surface layer part of our existence. And there's a lot of layers that need to be heard, that need to be witnessed, that need to be softened into before we can start listening to life. And so finding your no is just as valuable as finding your yes. That's what it is. So I'm going to stop there. But these are those moments, and maybe some of what I'm saying is triggering you, and maybe it is annoying to hear someone tell you how to live your life, or to tell you that you're not listening to life, right? Great. Those are parts of your experience. Soften into that. Fucking cuss at the camera right now, at the guy who's talking to you. That's how we're going to come back to center. That's how we are going to recalibrate, is through listening to what's here, acknowledging what's here, and through that opening up more space to be with our authentic experience.